signing this is essential in early adolescence, since we're developing and cementing our personal moral code while peer pressure is at its peak.
Can I think about it?
What could you possibly have to think about?
But it's complicated. I mean, the economics of it all.
I need the paper, Jonah. Signed.
You wouldn't want me to sign something I don't completely believe in, would you?
Quiet. You don't think it's important to say no to drugs and alcohol?
Well, it's just not that simple.
How is it not that simple? Drugs are addictive. They cause crime and death.
And they also prop up the U.S. economy.
I said quiet. What are you talking about?
I mean, are you familiar with gross domestic product? It's the total of all the money spent on...
I know what gross domestic product is.
I mean, I'd definitely sign something that says it'd be great if people didn't get addicted to drugs, but people are addicted to drugs, and in order to get the drugs, they have to buy them, right? And that drug dealer has to feed his family. They're innocent. They can't starve, can they?
Jonah, how about we just...
They need a house and clothes, and the family needs a car. There was even this theory that says drug money was the only thing that prevented the collapse of the global economy in 2008. You know, when real estate went bust? Because drug money was the only cash available to prop up big banks. Not to mention the 350 million narco dollars that paid for bridges and roads and healthcare, probably even education. Maybe even part of this school.
Jonah, would you step aside for a minute, please?
You gotta admit, he's right. Economically speaking, I mean, it's not easy to hear, but...
This was not an intellectual exercise.
Now, that's Ozark, and we're back. This is part 3. That's Ozark season 1. And episode 7, I believe it's called Nest Box. And again, I mentioned I'd go back and review these previous seasons, but that is the overall consensus of what we're also seeing. Now we're like actually seeing detail fleshed out of like how Wendy has attained so much power. And did you hear all that? How narco money paid for all of those things? Again, I'm not condoning and I'm not politicizing this channel. I'm just saying that that's why the heart and pulse of this show is very much nestled in reality and things that, yeah, don't necessarily, they're not informing the general public. But if you do enough digging, you start realizing, oh, you know. And that's probably also perhaps why we've seen a number of personalities also come through. Kind of like Atlanta had all these like social media influencers for this season. Ozark brought in Killer Mike. Killer Mike is a well-known activist and tells it like it is. Also, he's a rapper. He's been in the game for years, but and he's known for all his records. He's worked with Outkast and whatnot. And again, the soundtrack, aside from Sam Cooke, there's Nas. They brought in like all the classics. Tribe Called Quest, because our Ruth is a big hip-hop fanatic. But Killer Mike is known for telling it like it is. I mean, TMZ has a number of interviews of him speaking on politics and his stance. So to see him and also interact with Ruth when she's kind of spiraling out of control, about to see if she had it in her to really like, because I mean, again, she is a killer. I want people to like be clear on that, because I know Ruth became very much beloved when it came to the series. Her curls, her, you know, underdog perspective in life, always trying to reach the brass ring but never really quite attaining it. Either because, again, lack of education, or she just doesn't sound like Wendy, so she's not as believable. But she does get to outwit her. And definitely when she starts to partner up with one of the former entrepreneurs of Ozark, which her name, escapes me the character name, but she was the former owner of the Blue Cat Lodge or something like that. And unfortunately, they got her addicted to drugs and whatever and whatnot. Not the birds, an FBI informant. And she just like resigns and just opts to leave for a better life, for greener pastures in Florida, working at some like retail job when it comes to like decorating and shades and whatnot. Ruth presents her the idea of like, I need you to come back because we're about to like really take over. But I'm getting ahead of myself. And the reason why I'm dressed like this is because towards the end of the last 7 episodes, Wendy has her fundraiser, and it's very much this empire, you know, Grecian, beautiful gown that she wears. And although I tried to do the whole bun thing that Miss Wendy wears, it's more of a looser bun that looks more like Charlotte. So I'm kind of like an amalgamation of both Charlotte and Wendy. But nonetheless, so while Ruth is spiraling out of control, she realizes that the birds are like, you know, again, getting away with bloody murder. You know, they got that dealership with that deal with the pharmaceutical company. They're acting as if nothing's happening with Javi, you know, because again, Javi works on impulse. And Wendy does too, but she's calculating. So that's why she's so important to Navarro, but also how she's so dangerous to not only Marty, but anybody who's near her. And then as they're doing the transactions, Ruth has deprived herself of sleep. She's depressed. She's thinking about Wyatt ever so often. She's seeing things. I think she sees like a grouping of like moose crossing her path. You can tell she's not mentally there. And though she attempted to kill Javi for a first attempt, she fails miserably, feels horrible. She's like, I'm such a mess up, a fuck up. And she's thought that probably her whole life. She couldn't really pull the trigger. And she got the gun also from Frank Jr., which is unmarked, because she was going to go through with it. But then the part of her humanity kind of pulled her towards like, don't do it. Also, her cousin, who's brother to Wyatt, was like, don't do it. He wouldn't want you to be doing anything crazy. But then towards the end, she just couldn't. And I think she assumed that she would somehow conceive some form of solace in doing it. But I think it brought her even more pain when she did it. She ultimately does get the birds, because she had been following the birds the entire afternoon, and you could see that they're scouting offices and new homes. And she's like, why do they get to live this great life? I've been in a trailer and been marked since day one. All I've ever known is, you know, Schitt's Creek. And why do they get to be successful? Why do they get to live their life and jolly and whatnot, whatever the case may be? Always perpetuating that they're always near danger, but it doesn't seem like they're ever near danger. So I think that builds up hate, resentment, frustration. And she just had it. She meets with them. She ambushes them, the CEO and the birds, while they're having dinner. And she tells them, we're going to go back to your office, and you better call that motherfucker, and we're going to put an end to this. And the CEO is like, Claire is like caught off guard, like, what is happening here? They go back to the office, and this is like whole scene. Hold on a second.
They will tear everything you have to the ground. And somehow they'll make you feel like next time it'll all be different. Because you want to believe. They'll make you feel like they fucking care. But Wendy, she's fucking soulless. She will rip your heart out of your chest if it helps her get what she wants. She's like a fucking predator that doesn't even know why it's killing anymore. And Marty, he pretends to care.
But really, he doesn't have any real emotion. Or else he's too fucking cunt-struck to even know who he is anymore. Do you really think everything you do is to protect your family? Are you really that fucking shut down? They've stolen people's businesses. They drag their kids into every part of the drug business. They've had people killed. Do you honestly believe every story they've ever told you?
You've said enough.
And there we see, like, where they stand in terms of power, and we also see that Wendy hates to be confronted with the truth, very much like her own father. Again, even though her father was abysmal and an abuser, she got a lot of his behavior and how to deal with things, and how, again, there were moments where they fought as father and daughter, and when he's confronted with the truth, you know, very quick to like nip it in the bud. And so she's very that. Even the way she even drinks to deal, like at the end of this particular scene, and as you know, Javi meets his demise, the way she takes the amount of like little teeny bottles from the mini bar, her father ends up doing the same thing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. It's just learned abuse, learned behavior. And up until this point, I don't think that she was really taking accountability of her behavior. She just thought, again, she's just going to wield her power, wield what she needs to get what she needs, what she wants, even if it came to loss and destruction of other people's businesses and family life and family and money. So, but Ruth, she gets wise. She gets hip to the game and is able to employ the former owner of that Blue Cat Lodge and brings her back to the Ozarks. And also she just lets it be known, let's get this money. Let's take the casino from them. And though at first it seems like they were going to do a merge, which Wendy was not on board with because they wanted to get their names on the license. And she basically tells them to F off. She was like, well, you know, she's like, who's going to give you a license anyway with all of your checkered past, Ruth? And somehow they get hip to the game that what Wendy has been doing. And they find out that because now Ruth's past crimes weren't so terrible, that if she can prove that she has rehabilitated and that she really does wants to be a successful business owner, like legit, they can expunge her past and she can get her name on the license, which would screw over Wendy. Finally, somebody screwing over Wendy and Marty. And also because, remember Darlene Snell, which that's why I have to review all these other episodes, she was part owner of the casino. That's how they kind of were able to even establish anything with that boat casino, because they had partnered with Darlene. Now, because of Darlene's passing and her marrying Wyatt, because she ends up marrying Wyatt like in the first half of the first part of the season, because she wanted to keep the baby, the one that she had been fostering, Zeke. She marries Wyatt, and so because of family and blood relation, Ruth is able to just snag the business from them, which is like, but of course, you know, this is Ozark. We're not going to get away with like screwing over the birds. In the meantime, poor Wendy is like also now falling apart, with the sense that that detective is still on their shit. Her father is still now becoming a trouble, because again they are so relentless in trying to find her brother, which she knows he's dead, but she has to keep up the appearance that he's missing. because in the way that she did the merger with the CEO from Shaw, she was like, oh, you know, our foundation goes hand in hand with this pharmaceutical company because of my brother's drug addiction and you know, mental health issues. And had he found help, he never had a drug problem, but she used that as a catalyst to strike empathy and sympathy in people. And she's really gone far with that. She really puts it on. People have said, why are you saying that? I think part of her didn't want to also accept that he was gone, but maybe she was coping this way, but also because she knew that it worked in her favor for great PR, and people would be attracted to that and want to contribute. Now, that clip I played where Jonah at a very young age already understood the dynamics and the economy and how it worked and how it's related to basically, you know, narcotics and narco money. We see that here, and how politics weighs in as well, because there's some senator here that Wendy is pressed on having as a board member, but how he's also played into dirty politics of suppressing votes. And though it's a dilemma, a moral dilemma for her in accepting that in having this man in her pocket, she would have to accept that this man is basically doing corrupt BS with his son, who's a judge, a federal judge, and his grandson, who's in tech, and have figured out more or less how to suppress votes so it works in their favor. But she has to take it because, again, she's still seeking that power. And how people sometimes will abandon their moral compass to get what they need and achieve what they need, which is money, power, respect. That's what it is. It all boils down to. Amazing how this season showcased that, and not for nothing. I know a lot of people hated Wendy's character, and I think it was partly because she was a woman. Had she been a man, I'm sure that her character isn't anything different than what we've already seen in other shows like Billionaires and Succession, right? Cutthroat males doing whatever they have to get what they need. So I almost feel like people aren't on her side or want to villainize her, but she represents a good portion of the country and how the country thinks and believes that they're actually contributing to the country, or contributing to whatever their objective is. But how they operate in behind closed doors is what's jarring. But we see it here, how it really is a form of entertainment for us, but shocking. But, and again, she stood out for that. She stands out because a lot of people, you know, will play the right, even with the politics that we've been seeing as of late. And again, I don't want to bring up such a morbid thing, but what happened in Texas, that's what I'll leave it. And how people will have the nerve to go on camera and act like, you know, because you don't want to upset. That's the money. That's where the money is. That the money trail is. NRA. That's where the money trail is. So let's pretend this isn't happening, though we know it's happening. But let's, you know, play blind, deaf, mute. Blame it on other things. I feel like this was a tip-off to what the last administration was. It was just a very brilliant way of weaving in what has happened without it being a direct link, but we all know that that's where it was leading. It was a straight, like, haha, right? Isn't this similar to what we've been seeing? Or what happened in the last 4 years, or what they were trying to do in suppressing votes? Oh my goodness, but so many gems this season. And so, moving forward, again, they still are with this whole missing thing with Ben. Ruth, you know, getting herself together and legit. She's actually even now has the money to renovate the trailer park, and all the things that she had wished she could do with Wyatt, even though she sometimes visually sees him and has like interactions with him as if he's still alive, which is heartbreaking. This is why, again, there's so many tender and vulnerable moments. I think that's why people loved Ruth's character and did not want to see her demise. Now, moving forward, Navarro, is quick to have, again, because he has Wendy on his side, and his mathematician of Marty in his pocket, which for a brief moment, Marty kind of, it's so funny because up until this point we had seen him struggle with what he had to deal with. I think Wendy was a little more accepting of all the violence and all the things that, a typical kingpin would have to go through. A cartel head. And there are moments of him, he'll still have instances of humanity, but the fact that he had to kind of walk away from it when there's a suspicion that someone in the cartel tried to have Navarro killed while in prison. And they point the finger at one other particular, I forget what his role was, but I guess one of the captains. And he just, because he couldn't deal with the waterboarding and the torture, then he says, yeah, F it, I did it. They kill him. But then when Marty comes back to Missouri, he starts to quickly realize that, oh, it's his sister, Camila. And Camila becomes quick friends with Wendy. Gee, I wonder why. Both have the similar personalities. And then, because of that particular scene, the CEO of Claire from Shaw Enterprises and whatnot, pharmaceuticals, she realizes she does not want to deal with Wendy no more and wants to clip their relationship and dealings. She no longer wants her raw materials. She would rather just go straight to Ruth. And they would use the casino to money launder. But nonetheless, so she's like, we're done. This relationship is over. The deal is dead. But the way Wendy flexes her muscle, because again, I don't know if it's been all of these years of acquiring experience of the dealings of what this lifestyle is, that she uses Camilla to her benefit. At the same time, again, it's also pushing away her kids. Jonah's just like done with her. And also her father, for consistently being there like a fly, tries to take custody of her kids. And this is where we really see, like I said, she could be very calculating, she could be very impulsive, she could be very dangerous, Wendy. But once her kids were involved, I feel like that was her Achilles heel. More so than Marty. I mean, there were instances where you could see that she was genuinely worried for Marty's safety in other seasons. And though they're always met with that opposition. Like, when they're fighting, it almost seems like when we get back to Chicago, like, it almost seems like they're just going to get a divorce and call it quits. And at the very beginning, especially when Marty confronts her about her cheating ways. But I think throughout their relationship has been through the ringer, and their love has constantly had to go through all of these hurdles. And then they realize that they still do genuinely love each other. But we see her Achilles heel are her children. And when the grandfather, not because he wants to raise them, and he's still dealing with his addiction to alcohol, he just wants to do it to her. He just wants to make her feel rotten for all the ways that supposedly she made him feel rotten when she was a rebellious teenager. So he's willing to like tear this family apart, and she goes through her own downward spiral. So we not only saw that happening to Ruth, but we saw that also with Wendy, and she has a psychotic episode to the point where she literally can't accept him walking away, her father walking away with her children, Jonah and Charlotte. So she literally smashes her head against the window. Like, she's like up front right next to Marty, and she smashed her head. And he too, I think also when he's like Marty is also confronted with the fact that, again, people keep thinking that he's like pussy whooped and whatever, and that he's controlled by Wendy. He also has a moment where he loses it, but never to that point of like self-harm. He ended up harming someone else. But they both, I feel like they're so under pressure and stress. And we can judge, but again, unless we are put through that type of horrible pressure, can we really judge these two for how they've outmaneuvered or tried to survive in this really obscure underworld? So for a moment, she kind of tries to check herself into a mental institution like she had initially wanted to do with her brother. Perhaps under the guise that she was thinking maybe her children would want to come and see her and realize that she's in a lot of pain and perhaps stay there out of guilt and empathy for her. But that doesn't really necessarily work. And Marty's at his wits. He's at his wits. He's like, he just doesn't know, between trying to take over for Navarro while he's under solitary in federal prison, and he had to flex his own muscle to let it be known that, you know, he's not going to be messed with, which is a lot of pressure on him. He's still having to deal with the FBI, still having to deal with money laundering, and trying to keep his family together and not lose his wife in the process, like mentally. So he doesn't know what else to do but to go to Ruth. And although Ruth and him are at, you know, they're at odds at this point, he still like manages to like sweet talk her but also threaten her at the same time,